journey we've been on the last few weeks about cycles and getting into, how cycles lead us into truth and truth leads us into our authenticity or situational authenticity. And so we'll start off with this quote, right? Authenticity isn't about being the real me, but being true to your purpose and values that drive us. And so when we talk about authenticity, I think a lot of times it gets lumped into telling the truth. So if I'm telling the truth, I'm authentic. Well, telling the truth, of course, is kind of like the minimal standard of being authentic. But really, authenticity is about not only being who you are, understanding who you are, and then operating on a day-to-day basis in situation to situation, true to that. So it's not just about, telling the truth or being truthful. Really, authenticity is that when we find our truth around a certain issue or a feeling or a situation, that we're true to ourselves in that situation. And how do we carry that truth through to authenticity? And which I like this quote because it talks about our purpose and values that drive us. So we might actually understand the truth about something, but not actually make the corollary to our purpose. And so we might understand that, well, I'm not really comfortable with this thing. The truth of it is I'm really not comfortable with this. I'm going to do it anyways, okay? Because that's what's expected. Now, there's always some part of that where it does make sense. But this is all about how do we once we identify our truth, how do we live our truth? And by living our truth that's how we flow into authenticity. And so last week, we talked about truth as data points, right? Zeros and ones, that's kind of basic computer programming. And so the truth is, and again, it could be about a situation, it could be about a belief, could be about an emotion. I was just listening to a great podcast this morning about emotion, and that, suppressing emotions is one of the most dangerous things we can do from both a physical level and an emotional level. Physically, it can make us sick, okay? And it can make us emotionally sick, okay? So this is about, the truth is really about understanding, what's at the root cause of things, right? Why are things the way they are? And then instead of having that define us, we use it as a data point, right? So our past experiences are not things that define us, okay? But they're there to give us wisdom. And so it's wisdom for the journey. And I just love this picture. And because it just talks about, it kind of gives us this sense of the journey that we're all on. You can kind of see towards the end of the trail, but you kind of can't see all the way. You kind of see through it, but you can't see all the way to the end of it. And that's what the truth is. The truth is a data point. And then how do we take that data point? How do we fold that into our authenticity so that we're always, to the very best that we can, we're never going to be perfect at it, we're not supposed to be, but to the very best that we can, how do we follow and live in authentic ways that are authentic to us and our beliefs? And how do we do that in a joyful way? And how do we do that also allows other people to live in their authenticity? And I was working on something else this past week, and I wrote this down, and I wanted to share it with you. And it talks about the amount of energy that we put. Look, we've all done it, okay? And there's a reason for it. But we put vast amounts of energy into resisting the truth, okay? The truth in of itself leads to change, which then leads to our authenticity. But so there's vast amounts of energy that get put into resisting the truth, right? Change. compared to fractionally small amounts of energy that could be used comparatively to accept the truth and then have change work to your advantage. So as I wrote this, vast amounts of personal energy are used to resist the truth on the way to meaningful change, while fractionally small amounts of energy by comparison can be used to accept the truth and have change be to your advantage. And so when we're confronted with something that makes us feel maybe a little uncomfortable, or it's outside of our familiar patterns, or outside of maybe our social norms, we're going to talk about that, about how we're socialized, then we start to throw up roadblocks and we start to resist. Here's what I'm going to tell you though. I really would like you to think about this and see if you put this in practice. When you feel yourself starting to resist, that's the moment. That should tell you, okay, that there's something here you need to know. When you feel this compulsion to resist something because it's unfamiliar, uncomfortable, feels like something you knew in the past, whatever the case may be, when you feel that sense to resist, that's the moment when you should become the most curious. And that's the time when you want to give in and you want to go with the flow. Stop resisting, right? Use the energy that you would ordinarily use to resist. You know, you can use a much smaller amount of energy to then basically figure out, well, what am I supposed to learn? Because the fact that you're in that resistance tells you you're supposed to be learning something in that moment. And that, what am I supposed to learn? So just keep that in mind. We'll talk a little bit about socialization and all that when we're done with this video. So let's see how this experiment works. This is Greg Braden. He's really one of my favorite authors. And I can send everybody some of his books. But you can find him on YouTube too if you want to see some of you know, his speeches and all that. He's very good. His one of his most popular books was The Divine Matrix. And let's see if I can resume sharing here. Will this allow me? Well, let's just see if this works. Lorraine, can you see this?
We can see a still shot.
I don't know if you can hear me. We can see.
Let's see if we can hear it.
So when people ask me,
can we hear this?
About where we are,
can you guys hear this?
And many people are literally
sound, yes, no?
Not very loud, but yes.
Mindset of scarcity. This is one of those places where the answer is
That's good.
Can you hear it?
Because the idea of scarcity is nothing more and nothing less than a mindset. It doesn't exist in the world. It exists in our perception of what we're willing to accept in the world, perhaps more importantly, what we're willing to accept of ourselves. Every one of us is a being that needs to create, to express in our lives, in our world in some way. Our creations and our expressions are the fuel that give meaning to our lives and contribute in a meaningful way to our society and to our economy, if we're talking about that specifically. So when people have asked me, I have never felt a scarcity in my life, although when I was young, my father left our family. We were broke. We were in debt. That means you're broke and beyond broke. We were so in debt, we lived in government subsidized housing. We moved every year. I went to different schools in some really rough neighborhoods. I never felt that idea of scarcity because I always had the opportunity to make my life better. I always had the opportunity to find some way to contribute, doing something that would benefit someone else and benefit me as well. And I think this is the key. If we're relying upon our sense of abundance, if we rely upon the external world to give that to us emotionally and psychically, it will show up in our physical world. So if we're relying on the outer world for our sense of well-being, for our abundance, And if we believe that it is a right for us to have it, we will be disappointed continuously because the universe doesn't see it as a right. It's an opportunity to create for ourselves. And when we recognize, when we perceive the abundance that is already present, and it's not just about money. Money is simply an energy, and we're talking about energy here. When we begin to see the abundance that we have in our lives, and people say count your blessings, and I give thanks and gratitude the last thing before I go to sleep every night. I give thanks for the day that has been and the day that is yet to be. The day that has been, I will go through the highlights and the important things and the people and what they shared with me, how they made me feel, what they offered me in their stories, what they offered me in the ways that we've collaborated and worked together. I give thanks for every one of those things. And then I give thanks for the day that is yet to be. The day that will dawn when I awake is full, it is ripe, it is pregnant with possibilities. And every one of those is a potential. Abundance is a consciousness. It's a state of being. And my experience is as we embrace that on the emotional level and receive the abundance that is offered to us in so many ways every day, that shows up in our economic and our financial lives as well. It has to. And that's different than simply going out and saying, I need to make money, because that comes from a place of lack, saying I don't have any. And this is where I find people that have the greatest unhappiness, because they'll always compare what they're doing to others around them, and they'll always see themselves as less than. Perfect example, I just had someone recently say to me, don't you think it should be illegal for people like Bill Gates to make the money that he has made? And I surprised him with the answer, and my answer was no, I don't think that, and here's the reason why. Bill Gates is a brilliant man. He had an idea that changed the planet, and he fought to implement that idea when it wasn't well received, and I was working in the industry when this was all happening. He has empowered hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. Is he a wealthy man? Yes, and he has created hundreds of other wealthy people, given people jobs. New technologies have spun off from the idea that one man had. Why would I ever want to limit his abundance? The same thing with Facebook, the founder of Facebook, same thing, the founder of Amazon, same thing. There was a list of the wealthiest people in the world. In no way do I think those people should have been limited when it comes to them expressing their potential in the past. When it comes to the nuts and bolts of tax laws and things like that, it's a whole different story. But the principle of what has happened with them is they were inspired, just like you and I. And they took that inspiration and they made it into something real. And that reality has changed our planet. You can do that, I can do that, together we can do it. And when we begin looking at things this way, the idea of scarcity simply becomes obsolete. So as we come to the close of this
Okay, we back?
Yes.
Does my sound good?
Yep.
Okay, well, that was a fun experiment. Now we know that we can slide some video in here. So a couple books, I just briefly ducked in to talk to Lorraine and Chrissy just to see how I could hear, just so I could hear the video. But you know, Chrissy had said that she just got the Divine Matrix, or she has the Divine Matrix. So a good place to start for one of Braden's works is a book called The Divine Matrix. You can get it obviously in hardcover, or you can get it on Audible. I'm a huge Audible fan because of my driving and exercise schedule and things like that. So, but it's very good, and that would be a good place to start, The Divine Matrix. And really what he was talking about here is about being in authenticity. He's talking about scarcity, right? So when we're not in our truth, and we're not living in our authenticity, we're coming from a point of lack or scarcity. And that's why I was listening to this yesterday, actually, at the gym. And I thought it would be good to share. Now, let's just talk about the PowerPoint. Will the PowerPoint work? It will. So how to move through truth to truth to authenticity. So how to, right? that we move through truth into authenticity. So think about this in layers, okay? So I think the first one that is really important is that we have to understand the understanding of how we were socialized, how we were brought up. You know, were we brought up in a family that believed in this, or was I taught this, right? You know, was I, and I'm making all these up, was I brought up in a family where the belief system in the family that money was hard to get? Or was the belief family, was the belief that we had a certain religious belief we had to follow? Whatever the case may be, understand what those are, understand how you've been socialized. Then the next is the curiosity. Be curious on the impact of our past experiences onto our current viewpoints. So our current viewpoints that we have are all based on not only how we were socialized, but also our understandings, right, about how past experiences influence our point of view. The next is identify our constructed views of ourselves. So one of the things we talked about the ego a couple of sessions ago is, you know, what the ego is really good at is reinforcing whatever view you have of yourself. Now that view could be helpful or it could be not helpful. So, you know, if your view is that I can't do something, then your ego will support the view that you can't do that. Now, and so we all have constructed views of ourselves. And so it's important to actually understand, based on our socialization, based on our impact of past experiences, what is our constructed view of ourselves, of others, and of other events. Then acknowledge, now once we've understand how we've been socialized, what the impact of past experiences, what our constructed views are, then we have to acknowledge our prejudgments, because we all have prejudgments based on the three things that we just talked about. We all have prejudgments. And then next, as we're going through the layers here, is accept, right? Accept what is a want, okay? What we would like things to be versus what they are or what is. A want versus a what is. And those are sometimes two entirely different things. And it gets connected to our prejudgments, right? And then that gives us visibility to the truth. If we're honest with ourselves all the way through this, and we're doing an observation-based analysis, okay? Not the easiest thing to do, but gets easier with practice, like everything else. We get to, as we go through the first 5 of these steps, and we get to visibility, and we're getting visibility to the truth. And then the next step there is living in authenticity. And that is applicable in every part of our lives, every circumstance we have, right? So we can't necessarily go out and paint our whole world with a broad brush. We actually have to go through these steps for each situation or each challenge, or you know, each change that we want to make. And we go through those steps and we start peeling back the layers and the layers of our understanding of how we got here in our thinking process. And at the end of the day, if we've done all that successfully, it might take a few times to get it right, then we find ourselves just naturally living in authenticity because we understand how we got here. And so the truth brought us to where we are. We understand where we are, and now we live our lives understanding that you know, this is how I got here, and that this is what the truth is, and that I start to live my truth in authenticity. So great to be with everybody. Have a wonderful week. Take care.
Thank you.